Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning, Abe.
Hi, Bobby.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Bethy.
Morning.
Howard. Ivy. Everybody's back.
Good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Morning, Marilyn.
I don't know how many of us are on. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. There's 24 of us on.
We hear you,
Okay,
Ivy.
okay, good. All right, I went to the CRS convention. It was here in Dallas, which was so nice. And I'm going to just give you a quote that I thought was really good. Lee Barrett did a session on focus. Okay. He says, so people think it's important to say yes to what we're supposed to focus on. But he said it's just the opposite. What focus means is to say no to the hundreds of things that we feel like we need to focus on. And I think that's, that really hit a spot with me because I think so many people get distracted because there's so much to think about, and you try to start focusing on too many things and you don't get any of it done. So anyway, that's just a good morning tip for you.
I resemble that remark.
Thank you for that. I want to get started with today's a preamble to the next 2 weeks of masterminds, and I wanted to kind of go over the three levers of what keeps business sane, predictable, scalable, all the positive things that we want from our businesses. Who gets frustrated by the transactional part of the business? Anybody on the call want to admit to that? Bobby, you get frustrated with the transactional component?
Yes,
And how so?
there's a lot of chefs in the stew, and if the attorneys aren't doing their job, complicates things. If the realtors aren't doing their job, complicates things. I'm in a situation now where I got to deal with a township inspector, an HOA, a sprinkler head company, a contractor, coordinating schedules. It's torture.
And people don't realize that part of the business. I'm gonna share my screen real quickly because I want to just give everybody a little bit of a visual that will kind of help us understand what Bobby's talking about. All right. So in my opinion, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but the three pillars to a predictable, repeatable, and scalable business, which is a business that's worth owning, is incorporating these three pillars. One of them is basically making sure you have a volume of new activity coming in, right? And then you don't have to think about it. It happens automatically because of what you've done. And this basically requires, having some lead generation system or some way of getting business and having a follow-up system, right? Using a CRM. And, I know CRM is, an overused term, but I think that we all, or at least most of us, have a lot of opportunity to improve the consistency of the contacts that we have and the way that we convert leads into transactions. The second pillar is education and market expertise. So Bobby, you would definitely be qualified as a Woodbridge Township expert, bar none, right? Probably as good as anybody the activity going on in Woodbridge. And the other piece of education, Bobby, is for people that are our age, making sure that we have a eye for remaining relevant with all, like the broad spectrum of all of our clients, right? Because would you agree that, some of the children or grandchildren of your original clients that you need to treat them differently than the people our age?
Without question.
So this part of being relevant is not just knowing real estate. It's also knowing how to communicate with different audiences at different, you have somebody that is a police officer, and then you have somebody that's an executive at Merck, right? And I think that you probably need to have a different arsenal of tools and resources in the way that you can communicate with both of those audiences. And we also need to, focus time on, investing in sharpening the saw, educating ourselves both on our real estate communication skills, or our sales skills, and then on our product knowledge, right? Our product knowledge is what's going on in our backyard. I don't think that there's anybody that's probably more concentrated in an area than you. There might be some that are the same, Bobby, where how much of your business is Woodbridge Township?
At least 90%.
So 90, so knowing what's going on in the market, that's like super simple for you because you already know it, right? If somebody asks you a question, you might just have to look up, did that listing go under or is this new one on? But that's it. For you, learning how to communicate and having a different version of Bobby Golden that shows up to provide value to the different audiences. And have you worked with any grandkids of any of your clients yet?
Grandkids, no.
Children, yes, right?
Children, definitely. If I could just share a quick story, I recently put a listing under contract, and I was sitting there with the homeowner, and we started to talk about electronic signatures. And I used to be her paper boy. She looked at me and she said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, it's an easy way to do this transaction, blah, blah, blah." She said, "Don't even think about it." She said, "If you need me to sign anything, you bring the documents here and I'll sign." So to talk about, there's still some people out there that are very traditional and don't embrace the way we do business now.
Right. So I mean, it's not worth losing a transaction over being inflexible about the way you do it, right? You just print it up and you have them hand sign it to solve that problem.
It works out great. Believe me, I have no complaints.
So that's the second part, and then the third component, and this is grossly over exaggerating, is having systems, automation, and processes to follow up. And Bobby, this goes towards your comment about that frustrating transaction, right? Because how many people did you have to deal with in that transaction, Bob? You said that the township.
Well, I'm only talking about a segment of it, but right now it's a township inspector, it's a representative from the HOA, it's a contractor, it's a sprinkler head company, and coordinating all those schedules to replace one sprinkler head is bananas.
And you're doing that, right?
Yes.
So
I'm sorry, Rob. Sorry to cut you off. The owner lives in Utah, so I'm it.
And things happen for reasons, and when you're doing that, you're more than capable of solving that problem. But my first business coach always told me this. He's like, what you need to do is you need to delegate activities to the lowest paid competent individual. And my question to you, Bobby, is in that part where it's scalable, right? You kind of hit a bottleneck because it all revolves around you. Would you agree?
Yes.
And how many years have you been doing this?
37.
And you're a high performing individual, 37 years of experience. Maybe I'm going to move you 1 or 2% to thinking about how can you delegate those type of activities, because they're extremely important. If they don't get dealt with, what happens to the deal? It falls apart, right? And then your reputation gets dragged down with it. So you're very protective and making sure that, when you signed up that listing or you work with that buyer, that you're going to get the job done. But you're denying your services to other people because you're stuck in this bottleneck. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I tried to delegate some of the tasks, but ultimately I had to take the bull by the horns.
I often have this conversation with some people on our leadership team in terms of stuff boomeranging back to us, right? Because you give it out and it's not done to the satisfaction that you want, and then you pull it back to make sure you get the job done. Is that kind of accurate with what went on here? You tried to give it to somebody and it wasn't addressed?
No, it was addressed. It was a low level task, and I'm trying to delegate, but as the priority tasks presented themselves, I was the one that had to jump in.
Yeah. So going back to the topic is predictable, repeatable, and scalable. Predictable, repeatable, and scalable. Now, if you weren't doing some of these activities, what would you be able to do with the time you bought back?
It could be canvassing, could be showing homes, stuff of a higher priority.
And when you say, so if you had that time back, like what would 1 or 2 things that you do that would replace that are higher return items? And first of all, I appreciate you sharing that with the group.
My pleasure. I mean, now that the weather is broke, could be door knocking. I've been out door knocking. Could be, canvassing on the phone. Could be reaching out to past clients. Could be checking in with the current deals, making sure that everyone is satisfied. And if there's any problems, you address them at that point.
So after 37 years, you still like door knock what, once a quarter?
I mean, when the weather was bad up here in Jersey, I was shut down pretty much for a month. But if I can get it done once a week, that seems to be what I
Now,
like doing.
now for those of you who don't know Bobby also runs an office and a team. He's an owner of a team in Avenel. And how many of your team members do door knocking, do you suspect?
I can tell you right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 that do it consistently. And I'll stop there. 4 that do it consistently. Every now and then someone will jump in, but it's 4 people that do it consistently.
Right.
On top of myself.
And if you didn't do it, it might only be 1 or 2. And I think if we look at repeatable, scalable businesses, the business has to produce a result without us having to have these extraordinary activities in it. And over time, if you worked for corporate America, you had a job at Merck down the street from you, you probably annually have a review and you probably get a raise, right? And you might also get a promotion on top of a raise. But in real estate, the only way that we give ourselves promotions and raises is if we change the complexity of the work that we do. And we intentionally move some activities off of what Bobby Golden's doing, and we look at to be scalable by handing that off to somebody else. I know this is top of mind with me because, I was just out at Salt Lake City with Glenn Baker and looking at, putting in systems that can take you to levels that you never imagined. And your business in terms of, transactions and volume, what does that look like, Bobby? Do you know roughly?
Currently or generally speaking?
Or like how about 2020, 2025 and 2024? Like what was your volume in transactions?
In 2024, I did a little under 12 million. 2025, I got back up over 12 million.
And how many transactions is that about? 45?
Well, between 30 and 36.
Okay. And with 72 of our closest friends, is that satisfactory, or is that like, tell me your emotional, feeling on that?
Are we still on me, Rob?
Yeah, we're on you. Like, is that?
I would like to do more. I've been pretty consistent in that range right there. I would certainly like to do more. I'd probably like to do another 8 million in production.
Okay. So the only way, in my opinion, without sacrificing your lifestyle, which it's not worth it, is to take a look at how can you segment business, scale business, and find solutions so that you can be doing only the most important activities, right? In other words, like that kerfluffle that you have with a sprinkler head and coordinating it with the township and everything else. It's absolutely critical to the process. And most of us on this call are actually handling those things ourselves. But I think the people that were hanging out with Glenn Baker and I are figuring out a different reality, right? And Glenn, before you met those people in, and what's the networking group is called?
The forum.
The forum. Before you met with the people in the forum, did you even think that your business could look like what you envision it now?
Yeah, I thought 100 million was like, wow.
Like that was the 5-year plan, right?
Yep.
And now what's your plan for 2027?
321 million.
321 million. And there are a lot of people that throw numbers out and they just say, hey, it would be really nice if I do that. That's my plan. But I believe that the predictable and scalable component to that from Glenn is that he's leaning into other people who have gone through the same challenges that you have. And let's face it, Glenn, the challenges that you have in Wooten, New Jersey are probably not that different than they are in St. Louis or Dallas, Texas, right?
Not at all. Yep, they're all the same.
And I don't think you're putting out a number that's not attainable. And just because I know what you're implementing to do that, but you're also not going to be working 30 times harder than you were when you did 10 million yourself, right?
Oh, no, not at all. Now with the automation that's in place.
So just, and that on that third part of that, the third pillar, when we talked about systems and automation, can you like talk about a couple of systems and automation that give you the ability to plan bigger?
Yeah, I mean, literally implementing them daily now. But our listing process, for instance, once we enter in the related information to the listing, it puts the listing live overnight. So just did our first one the other day. So it's on two MLSs. The pictures got delivered. They got downloaded to folders. It selected the pictures based upon my instructions, uploaded it to GSMLS, and then it copied that listing over to NJMLS for me. And we were sleeping.
And did you figure out if we can? Because I actually went and visited Glenn. I was so intrigued by the process that he was doing. But Glenn, have you figured out a way that if you change the status in Garden State MLS, if it's listed in New Jersey MLS, it will also read that and make the change for you?
It will. Yep.
And Glenn, some MLSs are doing dual authentication. Have you gotten into that yet? Where like Bright MLS requires you to get a text message, which makes it even more complicated.
Well, I laugh, Rob, because there was a person, Kinney is his name. He owns one of the CRMs out there, and he pays participants in the audience $10,000 to switch to iPhones. And there's a reason for that. I literally, the code comes to my iMessage, which is on the Mac that's running these scripts. So it can use that and then go and authenticate from it. If you're not doing that, you can't.
Gotcha. So if you thought that this is something that's 3 years down the road, and it's not possible, then take a bite of it, adopt a little bit of it. It will make you better and also make you more comfortable in implementing some of these changes. Because back to you, Bobby, if I worked for Merck, right, I'm going to get a cost of living increase. And I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to go early. I'm going to go in on Saturdays to prove myself, and hopefully I get a promotion, right? In this business here, if you're not doing some of the things that Glenn is doing, or some of the things that you're doing, Bobby, by like mastering Woodbridge Township, then you're basically repeating the process year in and year out. And sometimes the coach say, all right, January 1, you start at ground zero, like you start at the beginning. And I refuse to start at the beginning because I want to build systems. I want to have predictability. I want to have quality of life, and I want to serve more people. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I know Rob Durso, Bobby's co-owner there. What do you contribute here, sir?
Well, I just wanted to give the majority of you a little respite, since most of us are not on the level of Mr. Baker and his technological prowess. There is a product that is being adopted by several New Jersey MLSs, quite a few Florida MLSs, called OcuCell, which will give you the ability to enter your listing one time and have it spread to all of the MLSs that are participating. And when you make changes, the same thing will occur. So if you belong to 5 MLSs and they all participate, they will be able to go in one time and get distributed. The other great interesting thing about that product is that, for example, if Remax Select adopted that, you could put your listing in one time, and every one of our offices throughout the country would have access to each other's listings. So there's a lot of really great technology coming down the road. Glenn is the guru. And probably is in the wrong business. He should probably be in the software business. But we're glad to have him, of course, because he keeps us on the cutting edge. But for all of you that are not there, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
So Rob, I'm going to just shed some light on that. Glenn is exactly where he belongs because he enjoys, no, he loves to help people. Like you've never seen, like he wants to
I,
help people.
I,
And,
I
and,
was being
and,
facetious.
no, no, I know you weren't, and it was a compliment because of his intelligence, correct?
Correct.
Like he should be creating new software programs that will change the world. But he's in the spot where he wants to be, and like you and Bobby, like you're always putting your client first ahead of the commission, right? You don't even think about that, right? Because that's what gives you referral business. And I remember when we had the grand opening for our office, we actually had the mayor of Woodbridge Township come out there and said, the only problem I have is I don't know which of these gentlemen I would give a deal to and it was so authentic. And that was just so powerful. And, Glenn is out there trying to, take agents that have deficiencies just because of what attracts them to the business and supplement those deficiencies to think for a better repeatable outcome. And, Glenn, your number 5 or number 7 agent in your team, what type of production did they do last year?
7 mil?
7 million. And, the top quarter of your team did what level?
Between 10 and 20.
Between 10 and 20.
Most
So
15 to 20, yeah.
So Steve, what did Steve do?
Steven had 4 months off last year because he bought a house and he did 13 million.
Okay, and Bobby, you did 12 million?
Yeah, a little bit over, but
Okay.
it wasn't 13 million.
So and what I'm saying here is just that the difference there, Bobby, is the systems that Glenn put in to keep his progress moving forward. And I'm not here to be critical to anybody, but what I do want to share is that there's a way that you can give yourself incremental raises by changing the composition of the activities that you do, and also by, hate to say it, but by comparing yourselves to people that are at a different level, right? Because sometimes if you're the top producer, you don't see the possibility. And, before Glenn went to the forum, you could not have said with integrity, I want to do $320 million in 2027, correct, Glenn? Because there was nobody to compare that to here.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
And I say this not to be critical on anybody, because I love helping everybody. I want to be a contributor to helping you have breakthroughs, but we can't have breakthroughs without breaking something to try to change, right? In other words, we're going to get disappointed. I don't know. Don't, are you on? So, I mean, I was just, talking with our leadership about, sometimes we get frustrated, right? And we wish things were a little bit easier. But if they were a little bit easier, then we wouldn't be challenged, we wouldn't grow, and we wouldn't be compensated, right? If real estate was not as complex as it is, and I know sometimes we're like, this is so much paperwork, it's so complicated, it can be difficult. It can be difficult. And if it was easy, there would be no need to call a Bobby Golden or a Steve Van Ness or a Glenn Baker. The value is because the transactions are complex. And if we can solve a complex problem, we serve a need, right? We genuinely help people. And it's like my mission to bring down the age of home ownership. It's an educational, it's a transformational piece, right? I mean, I think home ownership is more than shelter, right? Who believes home ownership is more than shelter? Liz Smith, why is it more than shelter?
Well, you got to pay to live in somewhere. So everyone's paying for shelter in one way or another. But then on the flip side, it is a forced savings plan for most people because you're paying down your mortgage because you have to each month. And ideally, the equity is growing over time. So that's one thing. But also, homeowners are more stable. It's better for the neighborhood. It's better for the community when you have homeowners. People are committed to keeping their properties up, and it's good for kids to be in the same school and have the same neighbors and all that kind of routine. So there's multiple impacts that are positive.
So it's fair to say that it's not just you're paying 100 more, 100 less, that it's basically changing the trajectory of their financial wealth,
Yes,
right?
and like potential for generational wealth transfer.
Through education, right? It's not just hey, compare this to that. And by the way, I was also blown away. I don't know if Glenn is still here, but through his chat GPT, this like rent versus own comparison for an open house, and it took about 90 seconds. Are you still there, Glenn? Took like 90 seconds to prepare this phenomenal rent to own analysis, right?
Yeah, best marketing piece I ever put together. Yep, it was incredible.
And it literally was compare this to renting for 3,500, and it did all these analysis, and he's like, highlight this and minimize that part to it, and right before your eyes, it puts it on the Morris agent letterhead, and it just, it's not next level, it's like next level type of stuff that it's doing for us. So,
If I could just add one piece to that, though. So I think, when people look at this, there's agents that love the contracts and the check boxes and things like that. But obviously, that doesn't necessarily make us money. Maybe it helps us make money. But I keep redirecting my agents because they keep going back to operational matters. And I'm saying to them, no, solve the problem you never wanted to do on the front end, right? To get clients. And I think that's where people are having a hard time envisioning things. If you haven't been able to launch an email campaign because you couldn't figure it out, you can literally talk to it. If you can't sort a list by Hispanic or the Spanish speaking people, you can do that now. You don't have to do it manually. Like, there's so many options. And I think that that's the piece that the value of AI is. You are now a marketing machine. You don't need Fiverr. You don't need any of these things anymore. Focus on those.
So, Glenn, everything has parallels, right? And one of the speakers there, which is a parallel on many levels to me, he said that his coaching students, okay, they tripled their net income for their teams by doing one activity consistently. And that was having 5 conversations with people to add to their team every day.
Yep.
And it literally tripled the profitability of teams. Just that one thing.
Yep.
And he said, forget about it if you have 10 conversations, it's like off the chart. I mean, and to be honest, I was not a huge fan of the speaker, but the results spoke for themselves, correct?
Nor was I, Rob. And I can tell you, I have 1 week under belt following that instruction to the T, right? 1 hour recruiting, 1 hour actually prospecting, meaning I'm doing it with my agents. I'm in the room. They know I'm doing it. This week alone, I set up 6 appointments and signed 3 listings from those appointments, and the other 3 are tomorrow, because I sat there and did the actual work with my folks. And I have to tell you, it's shameful that I didn't before. But the fact that he was right frustrates me because I don't really like him as a speaker. But
Right.
1 hour, 3 listings. Would anyone want 3 listings a week in 1 hour a day?
And there was another speaker who talked about kind of practical leadership, right? And he kind of had the audience at bay, but basically he said it much more eloquently than this. He said, what do you call the team leader who tells everybody to make calls and doesn't do that themselves? He's like a hypocrite.
Yep.
And people won't follow a hypocrite. So I guess, Glenn, you maybe took part of that and said, if my team is going to be doing what I tell them to do, I'm doing it every day as well. And then you're like, holy cow, it actually works.
Yeah, much to my surprise, I won't lie.
Right. So that's kind of building in the structure. I want to just talk for a minute about the next 2 weeks, what I want to do. And, everybody on this call has, a stronger resume of selling houses than me, because I've not been in the field selling houses ever. I've always been a co-pilot helping everybody and looking at it through a different lens. But the next 2 weeks, I'm going to talk about not how to figure out the value of a home, but how to communicate the process to get a better outcome. And I'm going to suggest to all of you that after you learn it, that not only do you implement it, but you try to teach somebody else. Okay. I look here and sometimes I question, I'm like, we have well over 1,000 people in the organization, and every week we have like 70 people on the call, 100 people on the call. I'm like, why? And, I want to deliver, a value, not in terms of, what we need to do, but I want to give you a value and how you can better communicate that to a homeowner or a potential buyer, where they're going to tell you, no, I don't want to overprice my house. I want to list my house for $150,000 less so I can get more offers. Right? Like those are the things that, if you're just coming on here, you might say, Rob, you might have made sense up till now, but now you're not making any sense because every homeowner wants to overprice their house. And I'm going to ask a legend, Mr. Singer, are you somewhere where you can unmute yourself?
My what?
You are a certified expert in Springfield and other areas. If you go to a house and tell somebody it's worth 700, do they ever try to overprice it, even knowing that you're the ultimate expert?
I show a lot of comparable sales. I show them where it's going to impede a sale if you overprice it. It's much better to have it at market or slightly below. You'll get a lot of offers, and the competitiveness is going to be almost like an auction. So yeah, there are people obviously that want to get hit the moon with the price, but
Even though Gary, you are like you're an expert in Springfield. If anybody knows that you've done a lot of business there, you probably have sold some houses 2 and 3 times through your career. Is that accurate?
it's accurate. Yeah.
But human nature is they think that if I ask more, I can get more. Correct?
That's a correct analysis. Yes,
And all the knowledge that you have in the resume of success doesn't always equate to a seller being logical, because sometimes they're emotional about how they want to go about it. And my desire, my passion is to try to give you different processes on how to make it a little bit easier. You use the term auction, like you want to make it more like an auction. Like there's a process where we can, even if I don't have Gary's resume of experience and results, I don't have his local knowledge about what's going on. I have a belief that I can give you strategies of having conversations where, one of you can go into Springfield with never selling a house and have a process of educating a seller to get them convinced on their own that they want to take the right action. And I think the industry has been devoid of that across the board. I mean, you've sold so many houses, Gary, you're leaning into your expertise and you're trying to get them, but they still have a bias to overprice, even though you're by far the expert, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I actually just calculated. I started it back in 1969. What is that? 57 years in the business. Owned 2 companies and sold them both, and then served as president of the board of realtors. So yeah, my credentials seem to have spoken well for me. People will listen attentively when I make a suggestion. But even more importantly, I have two children who are both attorneys, and I always told them you got to show evidence. I mean, you'll use it in law, but also in business. And if you can show in writing and examples of why this property is worth more or less, you're able to document it. And people like to see evidence. That's kind of like important. And I can find many examples where a house was underpriced and it sold for dramatically more. And so that's really the focus.
So what contribute? Like, I want to get an asterisk before you retire, Gary, saying Rob gave me a tool or a technique to get both buyers and sellers to convince you that the right thing is to price it aggressively so that they can get the best price. I think that's the
Correct.
pivot that I want to introduce. And I think, by asking strategic questions from being in the business so long and watching the process play out, even the greatest experts with resumes of 57 years, it's hard to believe, Gary, that
Can't believe it. I
that
was
people
only 11 years old when I started. Just kidding.
exactly, but it's hard to believe that somebody wouldn't just say, "All right, tell me what to do, and I'm going to sign because of your resume." But it doesn't happen because it's new experience for everybody, right? And everybody has an emotional belief and emotional connection. And I want to give you a tool in the next 2 weeks to be able to not push, but to pull them in the right direction, right? If they knew what we knew, would they ever overprice a house, Gary?
I don't think they would, but that's one of the reasons that I document my comparative sales to show them. And it's in writing, published, and it's not something that is contrived. So I think documentation and evidence seems to be the important factor in getting people to be realistic.
So the pivot or the contribution that I'm going to try to give to everybody here, and hopefully that you can teach somebody this, and then you'll actually become better at it yourself, is not command of the knowledge, right? Because that's a different part of the education process. And I am convinced that if anybody ever wanted to have an expert on Woodbridge or Springfield and they did their homework, they'd be calling Bobby Golden or Gary Singer to testify to whatever this is, right? Because you are subject matter expert bar none. However, are we communication experts bar none? And I think that there's always room for improvement in this. Right? In other words, you have all the evidence, but if your children are attorneys, they can have the best, their opponent can have the best case, but if they can't convince a jury, they're going to lose, right? Does the person with the best case always win, Gary, or is it often the best attorney?
Best attorney.
Right. So you could have the best case, which is the information about what's going on in the area. But if you can't convince the jury, which is your client, that that's a bad strategy, then they might wind up losing, or they might wind up leaving money on the table, or they might wind up not selecting us to be their representative in the process. I think that's a very good analogy. And I want to give you extra tools where at the end of a listing appointment, not a presentation, but an appointment, the customer is trying to convince you that, hey, Gary, we want to make sure that we list it, we position it correctly so that we get multiple bids and sell it quickly, right? Because I want to go to one or two different agents, but have you ever had a client that followed your advice, listed the property, you got 3 offers the first weekend? Has anybody ever had that? Raise your hand. Okay, so we'll go back to Liz. So Liz, you've had somebody that's positioned it right, and you got 3 offers the first weekend. And did they always say, "Wow, you're so great, congratulations," or did they sometimes say something else?
Well, my last one, we positioned it incorrectly in the fall and we're too high. And I tried to convince him to do a price drop, didn't want to, took it off market for 30 days. We reset, went on market because in our MLS, we have to do a 30-day off market period to reset the days on market counter. And I had him clean up 2 things. One was painting the upstairs. And then we listed it lower at 250 and ended up with 3 offers and selling for 260. And he was ecstatic in that case because he didn't listen to me the first time. And then we did the reset and he came back on. So he was like ecstatic walking out of closing with a large check and happy to be moving on.
So
My case was like the last one was like perfect. Like he didn't listen the first time. But
so
yes.
that person learned, I'm going to say they learned the hard way. But have
Yeah.
you ever had one where the person's like, "Oh, just tell me what to do, Liz, and we were thinking it's worth 300, but you told them to put it on at 265," and then you get 3 offers and they're like, maybe we underpriced it. Did you ever have that happen?
I'm sure. Yes. Yes,
So,
we have. And then you're like, no, we priced it here so we could get you there and we got better terms.
so the process that I'm talking about, Liz, is one
Yeah.
where they understand that success means getting 3 offers. It doesn't mean that we underpriced it, right? Because that means that you hit
Right.
you basically optimize the pricing strategy, right? Is there anyone else that has a recent experience where somebody priced it right and then they said, "Oh, Rob, I think we underpriced it because we got 4 offers." Has anybody ever had that recently? I see somebody shaking. And Brenda, did you have that happen, or are you shaking your head to something else?
No, it usually happens when you sell it too quick. People usually wonder, well, did we leave some money on the table? Why did it sell so quick? Maybe we should have priced it higher. And that's when, you just have to tell them, well, we use the right strategy. You pick the price for a reason, because I usually, let them pick the price and, I put the information in front of them, they pick the price. And this time we got multiple offers. And this is not a good market right now where I am. And we got over asking price with 4 offers. Only one, which the one we choose, was over asking. The other ones were under, but nobody knew except for us. But I just have to tell the buyer, we picked the right strategy, and it worked. And it's we would have gone different way, maybe we wouldn't get in the price that we got so quick. We sold it in 2 days. So
So that when somebody feels like I took Brenda's price, right, and then we got multiple offers, they kind of have a tendency to question whether I maybe underpriced it because there was too much activity, and if I would have asked for more, I might have gotten more. And psychologically, Brenda, what I believe is they believe that they took your price, right, and that they're second guessing. Maybe we could have asked more and gotten more. That's sometimes happens, right?
it
But
does,
if
and
you
it's human nature.
Right, but here's the pivot that I want to give, and this will either be next week or the following week, but it's the same process, and it's one for buyers and one for sellers. And wouldn't it be better if that client felt really good about having 3 offers and felt like I have the best agent in the world? And the way that we get that is, instead of them saying that I'm taking Brenda's suggested price, right? What I'm going to teach you to do, if you want to come along the journey, is to say there are 3 unique strategies that we can do when marketing a home. And I'm going to even teach you how to position it by saying, look, if we decide to work together, or you pick the best agent to market your house, these are the 3 options that you have. Because what I want to do is I want to take it away from being me. It's not about me. It's about your decision, right?
Mhm.
And if you put the house on the market, you could put it on at the appraised value or perceived market value. Okay. And that's what most of us do. We go out there with the perceived market value because we're an expert. We say the other 3 homes, with adjustments for condition, bathroom, whatever, your house is worth $675,000, right? That's a perceived market value. And we think that's what it's going to likely sell for. And that's what we go there. We go there with one suggestion. And then the seller, by default, it's like playing poker. They're like, well, I thought it was worth 775. Is that reason? I mean, is that possible, Brenda, that a 675 home, the seller could think it's worth 775, right? And it might happen more times than not, right? That they think it's worth more. And then if you have evidence that if you paid for an appraisal, it's worth 675, and they think it's worth 775, where do you think most agents come out with that listing at?
So, say the question again.
So you assess the property, you say based upon the comps, and if
Mhm.
you were to hire an appraisal, you're pretty confident it would appraise for 675. You go to my house and you say, Rob, I think we should put it on the market at 675. It's not too high where we're going to discourage people from seeing it, and it's kind of like we could hold the line and get that number. Where do you think most sell? And I come to you and I say, great, Brenda, I see your numbers, but my house is better, and I want to try for 775. And then where does that house ultimately get listed, in your opinion, in those circumstances where seller is, I think my house is worth 100,000 more. You have all the evidence in the world, and you're the expert in Plano, Texas, where my house is, and yet where does it get listed?
The highest.
It get highest, or maybe it gets split in the
That's
middle,
what
right? Maybe
I say 725.
yeah, maybe they come in at 725, correct?
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, who's talking now? I can't.
Gail. Gail Napolitano.
Okay, yeah, Gail. So it comes in at 725, right? Now let me ask you this practical question. Is 725 attractive enough to move the property?
Probably not. I think 699 would.
Right. So it's a failed strategy, and it's designed by, there are three, and this is how I formulated this process. We're coming in there with a singular number, and the second part is that we're saying this is my opinion, right? So it becomes personal, and if they disagree, then it becomes a personal dispute, right? You don't see the value you don't believe in, maybe they say it, maybe they don't say it, but Brenda, you don't see the value. Gail, you don't see the value in my house, right? And it becomes personal.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that that could possibly happen, or that does happen?
Yes.
So what I'm going to teach you is never to say, I believe it's worth this because of these comps, right?
Right.
What I do is I mentally, this is so I say, hey, Brenda, if we were to have 10 agents come in and hire 5 appraisers, it's going to come in with 1% or 2% of 675. We're just going to call that the market value, or the perceived market value. Okay. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean that's what it's going to sell for, right? Because right. And now I've never positioned myself to say that that's what my opinion is. I'm just saying that's what it would come in if you had an appraisal. Is that a fair statement, right?
Yes.
But when I say I've done the comps and this is what it's worth, then it's directed at you, right? Brenda, you don't believe in it. Okay. So then I say, if you were to select the best marketer, the best person to sell your house, I found that there are 3 strategies that you can deploy to introduce your home to the market. One of them is to introduce it at the perceived market value, or the appraised value. The second strategy is, and this is a kind of out of date strategy, in my opinion, where you shoot for the stars, or you price it to have room to negotiate down. Brenda, I call that the lottery strategy. And then the third strategy, with which some of my sellers have exploited through technology, is they intentionally price it slightly below the market to attract massive demand when it launches, right? And I tell them that. And then I say, Brenda, would you be interested in seeing how other properties in the neighborhood performed using these 3 strategies? I've had 100% compliance with that, right? And then you just show them that, homes that have been on the market for over 120 days sell for 14% below the price. And this is what happens. Homes that list close to ask price spend between, 45 and 120 days on the market. They get 98% of ask price. On average, they have, 0.8 of them need a price reduction even to get an offer. And then the ones that list it 3 to 5% below the market spend under 30 days on the market. They sell for 4.2% above the original ask price, and they sell for an absolute higher sale price than the others. And I use this magic word, hey, if we decided to work together, or no, I would say, which of these options is more appealing to you? Right. And as soon as they pick that option, I've never once had somebody say, oh, but I want to interview somebody else. That just doesn't, that sequence doesn't happen, right? Can you see how that works? Because I've never personally assaulted their house. I just gave them information. And then I said, if we, which of these strategies do you feel would be best when you put your house on the market? And I promise everybody on this call that I've never gotten to that point and said, which strategy do you feel is right for you? And then the next step is not sign the listing, right? They're not like, oh, well, what's the commission rate? Or it's like, oh, but we need to interview other people. It just never happens, right? And I never offend anybody because I'm not saying this is my opinion. Because they're like, well, maybe you're wrong, Brenda. I'm like, well, I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm saying like, there's a way that an appraiser appraises a property. There's a process. And this is what the process says. But the good news is that doesn't mean it's what it's going to sell for. You have options. Which option do you like? As soon as they pick the option, they by default have picked us. Okay, and you see how there's three options in both cases. In the first case, there was the Brenda saying my house is worth 675, Rob thinking it's worth 775, and then we land at 7.25, which is still overpriced. But my process is anything over 675 is trying to win the lottery. Maybe you put it on at 650 if you want to get, auction demand, or you can put it on at the market. So these are the nuances that I want to teach everybody to overlay on top of your tremendous knowledge of the local market so that you can not only be the qualified expert like Gary and Bobby, but you can be the communication expert where they're convincing you that they want to price it at 650 instead of 675, right? I don't know, is Lisa or Lori on the call still? Maybe they dropped off. But I was just showing a colleague of ours, not you, Lisa, the Lisa Reese. Maybe she dropped off. But I was showing them
Lori Reese.
I mean Lori Reese. I'm sorry, Lisa or Lori. But I was showing them a text chain on a client making a decision from a listing appointment that was done virtually. Right. And the client said, yes, we really love your strategy. We want to list it. We choose the first price. Right. And the agent's default was, oh, they want to overprice it at 2 million. And the text goes, you want to list it at 2 million? Then the homeowner goes, no, I want to list it auction style at 1.85. And what that told me, and David, for you, that told me that the agent went through the process, but they didn't really believe it themselves because they thought that the bias of all sellers, because of the history that they had, was that they always want to overprice it, right? And it's very logical because if every time you go on a listing appointment, the seller wants to overprice it, that's what you expect. But when you give them lottery, market, and auction, if they say I choose the first one, it's not obvious which the first one is. Is the first one auction or is the first one lottery? And the agent thought the first one was to overprice it. And the client's like, no, why would I want to do that? I want to list it at 1.85. And that just shows you how, because of our trained behavior of clients always wanting to overprice it, we by default think that they want to go ahead and do that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So we're almost out of time here, but the next 2 weeks are going to be about mindset, communication, and it's going to take the skills that you have and convert it from a perspective of a home seller and a home buyer, right? And I have 3 minutes left, and I'm gonna just whet the appetite so that I have a good audience, and I'm going to ask. We have almost nobody dropped off, but we just don't have that many people on. But I'm going to ask everybody on the call if this was somewhat valuable to invite a friend or a peer. They could be with the company. They can be somebody you refer business to in your network, or they could be a neighbor in your office. Say, I really think it would be helpful if you join the call next week. Okay. And after the call, the biggest gift that you can have is teaching them after the call what we went over on the call, right? Because a friend of mine, Tom Toole, has a saying, don't practice with your paycheck, right? Don't practice. Like, why would you want to practice this process when you're on stage, right? Practice with a peer, and it works magical. But here's, who's got some buyers that are on the fence and not making a decision right now? Anybody? All right. So Liz gets the prize today. So Liz, you're gonna stop raising your hand. I'm sorry about it, but
I'm like the superstar this week. I
so
didn't
everybody has to give
anticipate that.
Liz. Liz is a phenomenal new team member in our St. Louis market, and you're just a amazing wealth of knowledge and very impressive, and a CRS member. So the
Oh
person
yeah, I
that's
forgot
on
mention her.
the person that's on the fence, Liz, like why are they not jumping over to buy a house right now?
So I have one that where they're expecting a baby and they're kind of like in that, should we buy now or should we just wait until after the baby? And I feel like interest rates, which I know we have discussed, like interest rates are what they are, has kind of made them maybe think we should just wait until after the baby comes. The other one,
If you haven't noticed, interest rates have ticked up a little bit in the past
yeah,
month, right? Because of the
yes.
war, right?
Yeah, so I feel like there was the people kind of jumping in and getting excited, and we were seeing lots of multiple offers here, like a month ago,
Right.
because
So,
things were
so,
trending down and people were excited and that sort of thing.
so I think it's a natural reaction, Liz, for a buyer to say, you know what, I could have had it at 6 1/8. Now it's at 6 5/8 or 6 1/2. Maybe I'll wait for the rates to drop back down, right? And then
Yes.
we try to convince them, and the more we try to convince them, probably the more that they dig their heels in many cases. I'm not sure if this is yours, but I think when we had the keys at 33 little forum there, do you remember the coin toss conversation?
Yeah.
You want to
In
share
the
that with
coin
the group?
toss, when it was like, well, if rates went down and you already owned your home, what would you would
Okay,
you be able to, or are
so
we
I'm
talking
gonna
about a different one?
no, I'm gonna give you yeah, you're on the right track. So I'm gonna be a little bit more succinct, say, Liz. So if we waited until the rates went back down from 6 5/8 to 6 1/8, are you aware that there will be 1 million more buyers in the market every time the rate drops a half?
Half a point,
Right.
yeah.
And then I would say, Liz, if there were 1 million more people competing to buy a house, do you think you'd be able to get a better deal or have to pay more?
More.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking you, and then let me ask you, Liz, what would happen if you bought now at 6 5/8 and rates dropped to 5%? How would you feel about that purchase?
Well, I guess I'd be able to refi and I'd still feel good about it.
So you'd be able to pick the house that you want. You'd be able to take advantage of the lower rates if they fell. So would that be a win or would that be a win?
A win. Mm-hmm.
And Liz, what would happen? Like, there's some like crazy things happening in the world. Not to get political, but we're in multiple wars. We see inflation coming down, inflation going up, and just to go off the script, I heard that the odds are more likely that there's going to be a Fed increase than a cut at this point. So, Liz, if you bought now and the rate was 6 5/8 and rates went all the way up to 9, how would you feel?
I feel glad that I bought when I did.
Okay, I wanted to, now what I've done is I basically framed the position that, and it's authentically true, right? If you bought now and rates dropped, you had more options, and then you can take advantage of the lower rates. If you bought now at 6 5/8 and rates went to 9, you'd be like one of those 3% rate people who's like, I'm not going to sell. I got a great rate, and you'd feel really good about it. But when you tell people without asking questions and where they convince you that it's right, that's part of the process, Liz, that I want to get across where it comes across naturally. And if you talk to three people, maybe two of them, maybe one get it and they buy in. But what's good about it is everybody has exposure to it, right? And now you know who's committed. And if you talk to three people with the perfect conversation, if it works on two of them, that's fantastic. If it works on one, it's still a win. That's what I'm saying. Instead of allowing people to sit on the fence. So that's going to be the second. I think I'll do listing sellers first, and then I'll do buyers next, or maybe I'll mix it up. But I want to take you. You all have tremendous knowledge of the local market, but I want to give you techniques on how to have conversations so that people who deserve to take action feel comfortable taking the action necessary to be successful. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we have 58 people left. I want you to, if you're attending next week, I want you to go out of your way and call 3 people and ask them to come on, and hopefully one person joins us. And we have more people on the call so that we can help more people. That's my belief. And for any of you, if you don't have my direct cell number, talk to your manager. If you want to call me, if you have a difficult seller and you want to help me prep, I'd love to do that and share with you, how to set the stage to win without creating, controversy or having an argument with the seller or a disagreement. How's that instead of an argument to get the process done a little bit more effectively? So I hope that this was helpful. We're over time by 4 minutes. Have a great weekend. And
Rob, I just want to say one thing real quick for those of our agents in Dallas and Plano that Rob and I have Glenn Baker coming out to speak on April 10th for 2 sessions about AI and his stack and what he's using to grow his business. So April 10th for our Dallas and Plano offices. And thanks to both of our guests today for coming on.
And if you don't go to see Glenn, I really think you missed an opportunity. He's going to be in Texas, and his nature as Rob and Dave, I want to share with the family what I've learned, and he wants to do it in person. So, I would say take advantage of that opportunity from somebody who's going to do 320 or 370 million in 2027. Like, I would not bet against him, David. How about you?
321. And guys, he's going to do something in the morning and something in the afternoon for beginners and for people that are already, advanced. So every agent that can make it, please try. He's in town with family and he's making it, spending an extra day for us to give back. So that's like Rob said, in his nature to just give to our community. So you guys have a good weekend.
I thank you all thanks for that announcement, David. I thank you all for giving me an hour of your time every week. I see a lot of the same faces. I hope I provide value, and I really want everybody to reach out to 3 people and invite them to come join us here because, if you think it's helpful, invite some friends to come join us.
What's happening?
Thanks, everybody.
Happy Palm Sunday for those who celebrate.
Yeah.
Happy Palm Sunday.